All right, thank you all for joining us. So today in this session, we are the panel number 3 for the innovation session. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. My name is Sandy Avila, and I'm the new Digital Library Sales Manager for SPIE, the International Society of Optics and Photonics. About a month ago, I was a science librarian at the University of Central Florida, so this is a new role for me. But I've had the pleasure now for 2 years to moderate these amazing panelists for the innovation sessions. So real quick, before I get into introducing them properly, we have 4 presentations, 7 presenters, 50 minutes or 60 minutes. So it's going to be tight squeeze. So just to let you know how we're going to function, we're going to let each of them do their 10 minutes. Afterward, we'll have questions. We do like to make sure that each of the groups gets a question to them. So we'll ask the audience for questions. If not, I have some prepared to ask our panelists. So thank you all for joining us this morning, and I'll get into the introductions. And that for sure is on my paper, so I must read this. Okay, our first group of panelists, Sarah McKee and Allison Levy, will present multimodal digital monographs, content collaboration, and community. Sarah McKee is the new project manager for publishing initiatives at the American Council of Learned Societies, where she works to support a healthy ecosystem for the creation and dissemination of humanities scholarship. Previously, she administered digital publishing in the humanities, a Mellon-funded initiative at Emory University that supports faculty in the development and publication of open and digital monographs, and served as managing editor at the University of Georgia Press for the Born Digital New Georgia Encyclopedia. She is an advisory board member for the Next Generation Library Project. Allison Levy is director of Brown University Digital Publications. In this role, she brings together key organizational, academic, and technological resources across Brown University to support new forms of faculty-driven scholarship. Beyond the Brown campuses, she spearheads efforts at the industry level to advance the conversation around the development, evaluation, and publication of Born Digital Scholarship. She is a project director of Born Digital Scholarly Publishing, Resources and Roadmaps, and NEH Institute on Advanced Topics in the Digital Humanities. Allison, who also holds a PhD in History of Art from Bryn Mawr College and is the author of numerous books on early modern visual culture. She has served as the founding general editor of 2 scholarly book series and currently serves as co-chair of the College Arts Association's Committee on Research and Scholarship. Our second group of panelists, Jen Ferguson and Amy Kirchhoff, will be presenting Teaching Data Science and Text Analysis in the Library. Jen Ferguson is the current head of Research Data Services at Northeastern University's Snell Library. In this role, she leads a small but mighty team with expertise in data analysis and manipulation, coding, GIS, and data visualization. Jen advises on data management tools, standards, documentation, and organizational techniques to support data discoverability, reuse, and preservation. She also assists researchers preparing data management plans for grant applications and to promote potential solutions for storage and preservation of research data upon project completion. Amy Kirchhoff enjoys her long career at JSTOR, Portico, and Ithaca. She started her career working in the JSTOR technology group and continues to contribute to Portico as the archive service project manager. She's currently the business manager for Constellate, a new text analysis service from Ithaca, which offers a comprehensive and easily accessible program that helps users develop text analysis and data mining competencies, along with related skills through multi-modes of learning and hands-on application. Third group of panelists, David Parker and Samantha Green, will present preprints, posters, and presentations, thoughts on collection, curation, and delivery of early research. David Parker is an experienced publisher and project manager with a wealth of experience with streaming video database delivery for academic libraries. David has served in senior editorial and project management roles at Pearson Education, Alexander Street Press, ProQuest, and now with Underline Science. He is also an advisor to and board member to the businesses and organizations active in the educational sphere and is the current columnist for Against the Grain magazine. David is also the co-founder of Lived Places Publishing, an academic course reading publisher with an innovative library collection model. Samantha Green is the head of content and communications at Morcier, the platform transforming early stage research. She has been in the scholarly publishing industry for 10 years, holding a variety of roles, most recently at Wiley. She became interested in science communication from an early age, from listening to her parents, biologists and computer scientists, try to explain their research. Samantha, as a creative professional with strong strategic communication skills, has developed long-term industry engagement and thought leadership programs that elevate a company's mission and vision. With content marketing and brand strategy experience, she is a leader with a proven track record of collaborating across multiple teams and stakeholders and brainstorming innovative solutions. Our final panelist, Niall Stern, will present collaborating on open access book analytics. Niall Stern is director of OAPEN. OAPEN. He has worked in scholarly book publishing for almost 20 years. Besides that, he has acted as an independent expert for the European Commission on open science and e-infrastructures. And for years, he was at the Royal Danish Library as head of department managing license portfolios for 5 universities and serving as chief negotiator for the National License Consortium. Let's give them all a round of applause as we welcome them to today's panel. Take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Let's see. So Sarah McKee and I are here to introduce Multimodal Digital Monographs, Content Collaboration Community, the findings of a spring 2021 summit co-organized by Brown University and Emory University that convened the project teams behind 8 multimodal digital monographs. Efforts to reimagine the monograph for the 21st century got underway in 2014 with the launch of the Mellon Foundation's Digital Monograph Initiative. 48 months into this program, the foundation made a total of 52 grants for a total of $19.6 million. And I want to add a footnote to that bullet point on my slide. Inclusive of a small handful of planning grants that led up to the official 2014 launch, the foundation awarded $32.78 million in grants to 44 organizations, some receiving multiple grants between 2011 and 2020. So I just wanted to provide that fuller picture. While a large part of Mellon's investment went to building out the digital infrastructure at university presses, the foundation also sought to support the community of scholars trying to publish their digital scholarship. To this end, a smaller number of grants was awarded to institutions experimenting with university-based models of support for faculty, which range from developmental editing and design support to help placing the work with suitable publishers. And let me showcase briefly 2 of those university-based models of support for authors. Brown University Digital Publications is a collaboration between the University Library and the Office of the Dean of the Faculty. The program supports and promotes innovative faculty scholarship by catalyzing both the practice and academic recognition of born digital scholarship. Emory's program is based at the Fox Center for Humanistic Inquiry. The program encourages conversations about open access and digital publication across Emory's humanities community and supports the development and publication of open access digital monographs with university presses. In February of 2018, the Mellon Foundation hosted an all projects meeting for many of the institutional support grantees. Representatives of these projects gathered in New York to share progress and challenges with one another during what were still germinal days. During the same period, the foundation convened project teams from the University Press cohort to promote collaboration between platform and tool developers. At the 2019 Library Publishing Forum, which was held in Vancouver, Sarah and I decided to foster an expanded conversation, one that would privilege content and include the scholar's perspective.
Okay.
Thank you, Allison. So the summit took place over Zoom on April 23rd, 2021. And we invited, as she mentioned, project teams behind 8 published or forthcoming multimodal books from university presses that take advantage of the digital environment in a variety of ways. And I should say all of these works are open access or slated to be open access, but the specific funding and distribution mechanisms for each book took a little bit of a back seat, even as we acknowledged how important those concerns are. And instead, we focused the conversations on questions of form and content creation, and also on significant concerns around equity and inclusion, because creating these types of projects right now, the ability to do that is only available to a very few authors. So 3 primary themes emerged from the summit, which form the subtitle of our report: content, collaboration, and community. So for the projects under discussion that day, the authors or the volume editors all had very specific reasons for pushing beyond the confines of the conventional book. So here on the slide showcasing content, we have 3 projects that sort of exemplify that really well. Shahzad Bashir's A New Vision for Islamic Pasts and Futures, which was developed by the Brown Program and published by MIT Press, asks readers to imagine Islam as a vast net of interconnected traces that change depending on your vantage point. So this Born Digital interactive work enacts, in a way, the project's analyses with a complex interplay of text and image in a way that just wouldn't be possible in a printed book. Kylie Smith's Jim Crow in the Asylum, Psychiatry and Civil Rights in the American South, which is forthcoming from the University of North Carolina Press and under development at Emory on the Manifold platform, allows the author to engage audiences much earlier in the publication process and to address complex issues for wider audiences using things like photo essays, data visualizations, and oral histories. Also from UNC Press, Nicole Myers-Turner's Soul Liberty, The Evolution of Black Religious Politics in Post-Emancipation Virginia, engages the Fulcrum platform to incorporate a series of interactive maps that not only bolster but actually inform her book's shape and argument. On the collaboration side, resource and expertise sharing between publishers, authors, and university-based teams has proven to be a really effective way to bring complex projects to fruition. The 3 projects on this slide, Furnace and Fugue, again developed at Brown, published by the University of Virginia Press, in fact, just won an award a couple of weeks ago, the Roy Rosenzweig Prize for Creativity in Digital History from the American Historical Association. Feral Atlas, which was published by the digital imprint of Stanford University Press, and features contributions from more than 100 contributors, with 4 volume editors pulling all of that work together. And then the Lab Book, an iterative work in progress with 3 volume editors, and published by the University of Minnesota Press on the Manifold platform. So all 3 of these large project teams have to work in concert, establish new workflows, and solve problems together. They require new modes of authorship and a spirit of collaboration, which I think the quote here from Susan Dorr at Minnesota encapsulates very nicely. And finally, connecting to audiences, especially those beyond academia, emerged again and again as a significant reason to continue exploring new ways to present scholarly content in the digital environment, but also to include wider communities in the production of the scholarship itself. So these 2 projects exemplify that very well. Sounding Spirit, which is a series of annotated critical editions of 19th century songbooks from the Shape Note tradition, is under development at Emory using the Redux platform and forthcoming from UNC Press. As I Remember It, Teachings from the Life of a Sliam and Elder, published by the University of British Columbia Press on the Ravenspace platform, which was itself developed in collaboration with Indigenous communities to present culturally sensitive material in respectful ways. So both these projects really engage with the communities, not just as audience or research subject, but as active participants. So here are the key outcomes from the day. Some of the common priorities that emerged across all these diverse projects include, interactivity and multimodality as wonderful ways to advance complex arguments, accessible and ethical engagement with audiences beyond the academy, just the value of collaboration, resource sharing, and very importantly, collegiality to drive innovation and a more capacious view of authorship. And then the very familiar common concerns that we can't overlook. So the significant time investment for authors and presses to deviate from workflows, limited funding, the still somewhat underdeveloped distribution channels for multimodal digital content, and again, the replication of structural inequities that limit the diversity of participating authors and presses were all paramount concerns emerging from that day. So we invite you to read the full report. We launched it on June 20th at the AU Presses meeting on the PubPub platform. Links to all of these projects are available in the report, so we invite you to take a look, and we look forward to hearing your questions. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Amy Kirchhoff, and I'm here with Jen Ferguson, and we're going to talk about teaching data science and text analysis in the library. And I'm going to give you maybe a 3-minute introduction to Constellate, which is a platform that Jen uses to teach in the library. So text analysis is an information literacy skill that is really quickly becoming a required skill in many fields, maybe all fields. It really enables greater research and faster research and discovery. Yet teaching text analysis it's really hard. If you're running a 2-hour workshop, the last thing you want is to spend the first hour setting up everyone's computer with the right software. And heaven help you if they come with a Chromebook and it's all impossible. So Constellate, which is a newly launched January of this year text analysis service from Ithaca, is really designed to help libraries solve these specific problems of teaching text analysis and making it easy to learn. You can come to Constellate and build data sets. We've got over 35 million documents now sourced from JSTOR, Portico, and some third-party resources like Chronicling America. That part's open to the world. And it's not actually what I think is the most important part. Because more importantly, with Constellate, your faculty and students can skill build. And you can as well by taking Constellate classes and working through Constellate tutorials. Once folks have done that, then you're able to use the Constellate infrastructure to actually teach in class. What can happen is that your librarians can teach workshops, your faculty can integrate text analysis into their class. And so you can run a 2-hour workshop because the environment's in the cloud, you've skill built, you're now able to be up and running with it. You can use Constellate and integrate it. It can be integrated into a semester-long digital data science class. It could also be integrated into, and this is our goal, our hope, is to have it integrated into just regular classes. So you could run a week-long text analysis section in 18th century Chinese literature. That's the vision we're going for in terms of enabling this type of skill building and teaching on campus. I think I'm coming in way under 5 minutes, Jen. It was longer when I was doing it, so take your time. I invite you to play. Point your browsers at constellate.org and play a little bit today. We've opened everything up through Monday. So you can come in. The only part that's normally is available only to participants is the lab. So build a data set, look at some visualizations, play a little bit. If you click on Analyze and you go to Topic Model or do some word frequency counts and you're like, whoa, Amy, now that was a step too far. We do run our Python Basics class regularly. We're running it again in 2 weeks. for our participants and trialers, and we'll definitely be running it again in January. And so on that note, Jen's going to talk to you about actually teaching text analysis.
Thank you, Amy. So I'll talk a little bit about the workshops that we're putting on at Northeastern that use the Constellate infrastructure as well as are based on some teaching materials that Ithaca has produced. So the workshop's called Python and Text Analysis for Absolute Beginners. It is entirely online. We've actually never taught this in person because this was a pandemic project, and it continues to be taught online. It runs for about 2 hours, and it consists of 3 main parts. At the beginning, we have folks build a data set on a topic that they're interested in Constellate. Then we expose them a bit to Jupyter Notebooks and teach them just a little bit of Python, pretty much just enough to get them into the third part of the workshop, which is the part where they use Python to run a text analysis looking for significant terms in the data set that they built at the beginning. We've offered this workshop 8 times now, and altogether we've had just under 300 people attend and have had to turn away somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 more. So I think wildly successful is what I would call this. So who is attending these workshops? They are possibly not who you would expect. They are certainly not who I would have expected would have attended the workshops. We see a lot of people attending from STEM disciplines. So people from our College of Engineering, College of Computer Science, College of Science. We also see a lot of staff members at the university come to these workshops, and they're not necessarily library staff. They're staff from all over the university who come to these. You actually have to go fairly far down the pie chart before you hit what I would have assumed was the core audience for this workshop, which is social sciences and humanities in the red there. I'll say that of the 3 of us that teach this workshop, one of the things that we find most gratifying about it is we've had representation from every single college at Northeastern at these. So there's clearly broad appeal for this content and this topic. So in our conference proposal, we promised that we would talk about some of the pain points. So that's what I'm here to do now. I'll say that for us, at least, there was a significant time investment that was required up front in order to be able to put these on. That's partly for 2 reasons that may be unique to us. One is that I had only a passing familiarity with both Jupyter Notebooks and Python before I started this project, and so I had to do a lot of skilling up to both understand the content, take Ithaca's content, tweak it a little bit for our own purposes, and then feel confident enough to present it to a crowd. The good news is that once you have those notebooks in place and they're working the way that you want them to, and you have them scoped to teach what you want them to, the workshops pretty much run themselves because you're just working through the Jupyter Notebook in front of people and talking about what's happening. But the hard part then becomes, as we found out, the questions. Even though we pitch this workshop as absolute beginners, right? The idea is that we take people who have never coded before and give them at least a little bit of exposure to coding. Yet, invariably, we have some folks in the crowd who clearly have coded before and sometimes want to ask very sort of detailed questions about why exactly is this line of code written this way and not written this other way. So we have found it very useful to have someone who is Python comfortable or Python fluent, who's just watching those questions and comments come in and just tackling those so the person who's then talking through the content does not get derailed by those comments, and you can step forward together with the bulk of the people who are attending. I'll also say that success for us has been kind of a gentle trap. We get really nice feedback on these workshops. A lot of people talk to us. They're very excited about what they've learned. They want to apply it to their research. They want to apply it to their teaching. But they're not quite ready. It's just 2 hours, right? So they're not quite ready to do that yet. And they're like, all right, well, what can I learn now? And We now have a more intensive Python experience that we can point them to if their interest lies specifically with Python. But for text analysis, we don't really have anything. And honestly, to this point, we've been mostly pointing them back to Ithaca and the Constellate notebooks that are developed there for text analysis. I just wanted to close by saying that I've worked in libraries now for about 15 years, and I would count the experience with this workshop as maybe one of my top 3 favorite things I've ever done. It's just so gratifying to see what is clearly a huge need out there and to be able to meet it in a small way. So I wanted to encourage you, if anybody out there is listening and perhaps intrigued by putting on something like this at your own institution, please reach out to me. I would love to talk to you about it. And here are links to Constellate, our workshop materials. Feel free to take a look and borrow them. And I look forward to your questions. Thanks.
Yeah, they love it. That's because they're pretty much your materials. Wow, they like to be rejiggered and put it together. That's
So posters and presentations, thoughts on the collection, curation, and delivery of early research. This is Samantha Green from RSCA. I'm David Parker from Underline. So like a lot of you, before I went into scholarly communication and publishing, I was an academic. I went to a lot of conferences. At every one of those conferences, I had the misfortune of missing sessions that I really wanted to be in because I had to be in another. Perhaps right now you are missing a session you wanted to be in, right? And of course, there were many, many conferences I couldn't get to because I didn't have budget or I didn't have wherewithal. That scenario left big holes in how I approached my thinking and my research. Fast forward to today, we have the ability and the technology and every other bit of infrastructure we need to capture those scientific conference presentations for future reference and research purposes. And if you think about this sort of scholarly communications value chain we're portraying up here on the slide, an academic now can access information about grant research proposals all the way through to the capping scholarly monograph that an academic might produce at the peak point of their career. That researcher I was 25, 30 years ago would have loved to have been able to go back, find access to a scholarly presentation in a database, find access to a poster session that wasn't previously available. That's what we're here to talk to you about today from RSCA and from Underline.
So we've talked a little bit about the need for that on an individual researcher level. There's also so much sort of cumulative value that comes from this early research when these kind of chaotically presented outputs, this is sort of a similar graphic to the other slide, but just representing some of that hidden chaos that a researcher might not see if they're just looking at a published journal article or a monograph at the end of that life cycle. And when all of this information is transparent and accessible to the broader research community, that can accelerate discovery and breakthroughs at a rapid scale. And that accessibility extends to the global research community as well. We've seen, especially in the pandemic, how virtual or hybrid conferences give so much extra opportunities to contribute to marginalized groups, whether it's women being able to present more and participate more, or a whole spectrum of LGBTQ researchers. We have the data. We know that this is a better way for them to be able to engage with this early research, and having it transparent makes it available to everybody and allows everyone to understand the evolution of scientific thought.
So what Mercier and Underline and many other companies share in common is we support hybrid and virtual events. What we have done at Underline that we think is particularly innovative is to create a curation and aggregation of those scientific scholarly presentations. So we've curated all of the content that has been developed in the events we've supported, but then we also go out and license from other academic societies and associations their conference presentations and proceedings that are oftentimes just winding up on YouTube or Vimeo. We take all of that content, we apply the rigor to it that you would expect of academic content. So we create searchable transcripts, we apply DOIs, we make sure it's exportable to citation, we create a context where asynchronous conversation can go on around the content, we link the proceedings, and we deliver this back in an academic-ready platform and player. That product just launched this past week or two, and we encourage you to check it out, take a test drive.
So from our SCA, what I wanted to focus on is the ways in which our end-to-end platform really centers research integrity for that early research. That's a big focus for us on bringing the highest levels of integrity to this content. That's important to us for a lot of different reasons. The first is that a focus on integrity at the early stages and across the whole research life cycle relieves some of that intense pressure to publish on the journal articles and on the monographs. It kind of takes the pressure off the tip of that iceberg. And if early stage research is both trustworthy and trusted, then it has the potential to become part of the conversation when we're talking tenure and promotion committees, when we're talking getting grant funding for your research. The second reason is that having a trustworthy collection of early stage research can help societies, publishers, journal editors predict what direction a discipline is going. You can see what's being discussed at conferences now, what experiments are being run right now, and you can use that information to launch a new journal, to create special issues, to develop themes for future conferences, and you can predict the future of your discipline and of your field in a way that's evidence-based. And maybe those insights can really help you to develop and to enhance new business models, whether it's APC-based models where you can bring in revenue, or whether it's creating a subscription project for your early stage research that allows librarians to bring the latest cutting-edge research to their faculty, sometimes years before that would become a journal article. And a focus on research integrity and peer review, especially at the early stage of conference research, improves the quality of all research. It's really a rising tides lifts all ships. And we do this in a way that brings the human rigor of peer review with technology enhancements across the board. So workflows that streamline the process while supplementing it with integrity checks for plagiarism and citation manipulation, integrations with Ringgold and ORCID that ensure accurate identification and validation of those people engaging in early stage research. And the power of our workflows and of our peer review process is really about sacrificing none of that rigor, none of the rigor of peer review, and enhancing it with the technology that can make it an easier and more pleasant experience for everybody involved. That's it.
And that's it.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I lost my presentation all of a sudden.
I'll just go back to the beginning. So that was a sneak peek. Good morning, and thank you for being here, approaching the end of a great conference. I'm going to talk about open access book analytics, but before I do that, more specifically, I think I need to give you some background as to where I come from, what our organization does. So a few words about the OAPEN Foundation. We are providing infrastructure services to enable open access books. And so we work with many publishers and connect those books to libraries and readers in general. Our mission is to increase the discoverability of open access books and to promote trust and build trust in OA book publishing. And this comes out of a project with not-for-profit university presses. Almost 15 years ago, we got together and we built what is now the OAPEN library, which is what we are running today. Also the directory of open access books, which we operate together with Open Edition in France, and the OAPEN OA Books Toolkit. And I'll give you just a few words on each of these. Excuse me. So the OAPEN library was launched in 2010 when there was less talk about open access books than we have seen at this conference, which is great to see that much focus on monographs also today. We work with we have books from over 400 publishers in the OAPEN library, now over 25,000 open access books. And OAPEN is providing hosting and distribution and preservation to these books. It's running on DSpace 6 with, as an open source platform, and we have a number of metadata outputs that we provide open to libraries. For instance, as you can see, MarkXML, CSV, Onyx, KBART, etc. So these and the Open API can be used free of charge for any library. Usage has grown over the years, and especially during the pandemic, we saw a large increase in usage. We are now around 1 million counter-conformant downloads per month from the OAPEN library, and this is a picture of the usage growth in the US. So although we have users from around the world, excuse me, we see around 15% coming from the US alone. The directory of open access books is not hosting titles as OAPEN, but it's indexing books from other platforms as well, like Project Muse, like Cielo Books, like OAPEN as well. So it's a directory in the same way as DOAJ for journals, with more than 60,000 titles indexed. More than 80 languages are represented from 600 publishers and more coming in. And we try to make sure that we work with publishers from around the globe, and we always are really welcoming new publishers that fulfill the requirements that we set, which is basically that they perform peer review and that the books are open access. All the metadata is freely available on DOAB in public domain, and it runs on DSpace, so with the same integration possibilities as for OAPEN. Just to give you a very quick view of the machine room, my colleague Ronald Schneider, who is sitting here, can tell you much more about this. I won't go into too many details, just to let you know that we really try to work as best as we can, facilitating the many different ways in which publishers deliver metadata, deliver their books. Some are very small publishers, scholar-led, maybe they publish like 5 books a year, and some are very big, like Taylor and Francis and others. So everything there and in between, we try to accommodate to. And then when we receive this, we sort of normalize that metadata to push it downstream to libraries and other institutions in formats that can be received. So we work with intermediaries like OCLC, EBSCO, Exlibris. You can activate the collections in their knowledge base, but also we work with Google Scholar, on Paywall, and other web services that are useful for discoverability and dissemination. We also have the OA Books Toolkit, which is a public information resource. You can query almost anything that you'd like to know about open access book publishing, and if you can't find it there, please let us know, because then we have an editorial advisory board who could probably come up with more content to the toolkit. And finally, just that we also engage in the OA Books community by co-hosting this fast-growing network, the OA Books network, which is hosting events and lively discussions on OA book publishing. Just to give you an idea, we are not for profit, and there's a lot of discussions about acquisition and mergers and all that. We cannot be acquired. and this is in our statutes and by Dutch law. So don't worry. We're a not-for-profit. We are not based at an institution, so we are based. Our revenue comes from publisher fees, which are fairly small, from working with research funders, and from our library membership program. I've put some flyers on the tables, and be happy to talk more about that. Okay, so and we've been vetted by SCOS, if that rings a bell, and we've been promoted by SCOS throughout a couple of years. Okay, so the statistics side of things. Since 2015, we have collected counter statistics, and we have shared those with publishers and research funders in spreadsheets, basically like Excel files. This spring, we developed a dashboard, so a visualization of the statistics, and more importantly to libraries, we also now share a library usage dashboard to those libraries that are supporting us. And the way this works is basically that you can access the data, the usage data, the counter-conformant downloads of the books that are being used within your IP range. So you provide us the IP range, and then we provide you access to the dashboard. And then you can filter by date or by publisher, for instance. You can download the whole thing as a CSV file, but you can also get visualizations like this to see which books have been used the most within your library. Furthermore, you can also have a look at how are books being used beyond the campus, because open access books, of course, don't have to be accessed through the authentication system of the library. So this is an image from a library in the Netherlands, the Utrecht University Library, and the circle on your left is actually the campus, whereas the circle on the right is a neighboring city. So you might expect that students are living, perhaps, or researchers in that city. And so you can get a better, sort of more detailed view on how usage is spreading around campus. And you can set the distance to also to up to 500 kilometers, actually. This is from the northern part of Norway, where people don't live as close by each other as in the Netherlands. Okay, so we have small 2-minute videos on YouTube explaining the dashboard, so you can go and look out. Now, we want to do more in this, and this is the new thing about what I'm presenting, is a further collaboration on usage statistics dashboards. And this is a project that we are currently part of, funded by the Mellon Foundation, and we partner with Curtin University in Australia and Educopia in the US. Its name is the Book Analytics Dashboard Project, so our abbreviation, our acronym is BAD. So we are running a BAD project. Hopefully we'll have some useful, good results by the end of the project period. The idea of this project is to also to collect the usage in whatever form this usage is being measured in from different platforms, so across different platforms. Currently, we have the usage coming from the publishers that we work with, from the OAPEN platform, and from JSTOR, and also from Google Books. And this will then create, now this is a mock-up, but it will create numbers, and it will show you, you can see to the far below on the right, the different sources that we collect the data from. So this will give publishers a more comprehensive view on what is the usage of a single book and across their catalog, which is very useful to book publishers. I come out of book publishing myself, and you want to know what happens to my books. And I want to have my books in as many places as possible. So for the library as well, you can have the same overview of a single title that has been used this much on JSTOR, this much on OAPEN, and we would like to see more data sources coming in. And I think Project Muse could be one. You could imagine others as well. So this is something we would like to discuss also with libraries, which sources are interesting and would be good to have into this dashboard. And we will, as part of this project, we will reach out to publishers, to libraries, to research funders, to engage and to listen back from what your needs are. And of course, we will also provide some geographical usage data, and I think also quite important, citations through Crossref and events on Wikipedia, events on Twitter and other social media as other types of indicators of usage, which is not downloads, but more like how are the books actually being discussed on other platforms. And you can imagine more indicators. And that is actually my final slide here, is to ask you about what kind of indicators are important for libraries, especially here, when you take decisions on what to support, what to purchase, what to acquire. As Sandy mentioned, I also have a background at libraries in acquisition and in licensing, and this is quite brand new. So when you're acquiring content, licensed content, purchasing content, you have, you look at cost per download, or you look at citation analysis and other things. What about open access content? What kind of metrics do we want? So maybe you also want to look more at a more sort of qualitative data. And this is something we have discussed with several libraries, including Columbia University Library, who is currently developing a rubric to assess what kind of vendor that they would like to deal with. And they will talk more about this in our coming virtual session, which will be November 14, where they will present how they have worked with their rubric, inspired by other rubrics at other US libraries. And I think there's really a lot of interesting things. There are lots of interesting things going on to think about how libraries can make more strategic decisions about purchasing content, actually not only open access content, but also for non-open access content. So stay tuned for the next presentation, which will be virtual and on November 14. And with that, I thank you and look forward to your questions.
Great job for our panelists, right? Let's give them all a round of applause. Big one. They did well staying under time, so I didn't have to do too much of the 1 minute thing. So, all right, I'd like to open up questions for the audience before I ask some that I have already arranged. We are recording this session, so I kindly ask that you come up to the microphone up front. Don't really have another person that could carry it around, but does anyone have a question they'd like to ask? Julia, do you want to come up? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Julia Gelfand from the University of California at Irvine, and I'm interested in the presentation on Constellate. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about just getting started and rolling it out. Is it too much to incorporate in what was formerly our data carpentry's experience and computational outreach in that respect, or is it something that should be a standalone, and how do you kind of structure and promote the differences? Thank you.
Is this thing on? Is this thing on? Awesome. Let's see. Interesting. I'm trying to think about the history of how that happened, because it's been a couple of years now. We actually didn't offer anything like a Python standalone workshop before we started with Constellate. That was the thing that sort of nudged us into doing that. And so we didn't really have a before. Constellate was our before. And because we saw that kind of uptake, then we started to send people through carpentry's training. And capacity is always an issue. But we have started to dabble in offering standalone Python as well. So for us, it was actually Constellate that started first. And I think that is one reason why it took us a while to get up to speed with it. When I say that it took a while, I would say that it took the better part of a summer for us to sort of wrap our heads around what that workshop would look like for us and to feel comfortable enough teaching it. Did that answer your question reasonably well? Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Okay.
Hi, I'm Rachel Fox von Swearingen from Syracuse University, and I have a question for Niels pertaining to the open access book analytics. So I'm very, very excited about this on seeing what my users are already accessing so that I can then get those particular OA titles, make sure they're in my catalog. So one of the things that I'm trying to wrap my head around is how I can track what my users are accessing off campus. Because if they're not going through my proxy, then, which it seems ridiculous to proxy an open access title, but if they're not going through my proxy, how can I tell? And are we thinking about that? I have no idea whether that's even possible.
That's a good question. Thank you for that. And so I'd say, first of all, we don't track users. I think that's part of our mission to be fully, open source but we can, as I said, we can track what kind of usage has been on the titles that is around your campus. So setting this geolocation for up to 500 kilometers, you can see, what is going on, which books are being used in that region around your campus, to give you an idea of usage that may not actually go through the authentication systems. Because, as you say, it's different. I mean, open access books don't have to be used that way, and I think many libraries have seen that activating either DOAB or OAPN in their knowledge base, be it the Ex Libris or others, is quite easy. So you can, activate the collection, then it's in your library system, and then you can come to us, and then you can have access to the dashboard, and then you can monitor the usage. I hope this answers your question. Otherwise, again, Ronald would be probably able to give you more details if you are interested. Thank you.
I think we had someone else in the back.
Hello. Hello, everyone. I'm Blake Robinson from Rollins College in Orlando, Florida. We're a small liberal arts college. And one of the questions I have for the data folks is, I have a very particular need. I'm trying to see if we can get students to analyze historic trade and industry publications so that they can get a holistic idea of how the business world has described itself over the last century. Can your platform do something like that? Because I was in JSTOR. Is it drawing just from JSTOR content? How does that work? Because I didn't see a lot of, is there another source for this data that you guys might have access to?
Yeah, okay. I think this one might have been the one being funny, so I don't know. Can you all hear me? Okay, good. So Constellate includes content, nearly all of JSTOR, a little over 100 publishers from Portico. So that's all secondary literature. It's journals and books. It's a pretty broad spectrum in terms of topics, but specific trade literature is not going to be in that. We've also included, we've brought in Chronicling America and a couple of collections from Documenting the American South, and then a few of the more sort of interesting, newer, esoteric collections on JSTOR, South Asian Open Archive, which is part of Community Collections we brought in, and several of the Reveal Digital primary source content. Off the top of my head, I don't think any of that exactly matches your specific topic area. Constellate's really multifaceted. So there is the part where you're going to use point and click tools to build visualizations and build a data set and decide this is a data set I want. There's also the Constellate Lab, which is, it's Jupyter in the cloud. We essentially give every user a little computer in the cloud that's just for them. We pre-populate it with a bunch of Constellate notebooks and analyses. And in that space, you could load in content that we don't have, and you can put it right into the lab. We actually have notebooks that will both OCR, show you how you can OCR existing content that you have, and then tokenize it to sort of turn it into the Constellate format, and then it would work sort of interchangeably with Constellate data sets in the lab. That does require a level of Python knowledge and comfort. We do, however, we know that's a really high bar for a lot of our users. So that's one of the reasons we emphasize teaching so much. So in the spring, we taught a class on tokenization, and then this fall, we taught a class on OCR to try and train people up a little bit in that space. So that's how we're trying to accommodate, because everybody has unique content. There are some researchers who are really interested in the secondary literature, and there's some fascinating things you can do in there, but everybody has their own area of interest when you hit the research realm that may or may not be met by journal articles. So there's a lot you can do in the lab itself space outside of the Constellate user interface. Happy to answer more questions if you have them.
I'm going to ask a question to our first presenter, Sarah and Allison. So with your multimodal digital monographs works, what are some of the actions that can make what you're doing more inclusive and diverse?
Thank you. So that is a huge and really challenging question, and I think from the summit what we saw was just a real will to think about that and to figure it out, and to make sure that whatever we do in this space of innovative digital publication, that it doesn't just skew toward the very well-funded institutions, so that only certain authors and certain publishers have the opportunity to participate. Just to connect a dot here for a minute, I think what you're seeing with those numbers at the workshop for text analysis is indicative of the interest that we're seeing on our campuses in digital humanities and using these new tools, and that inevitably is going to feed into the publishing stream in some form or fashion. So being able to support that is a really important thing. So we have done some sort of hyper-local efforts ourselves in Atlanta. I've been running some workshops that we open up to faculty at other institutions, and we've definitely, not at your numbers for sure, but we've had people who are interested in coming and learning about that. And then maybe Allison, do you want to talk about the NEH workshop? Yeah.
So this past summer, Brown organized an NEH Institute on Advanced Topics in the Digital Humanities, and that institute was called Born Digital Scholarly Publishing, Resources and Roadmaps, and it was designed to support authors from less well-resourced institutions. So we had a cohort of 15. I had well over 50 applications. Of our 15 in the cohort, more than half teach at HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities. So I think, again, that points to the interest among scholars in learning how to present their scholarship in these new innovative ways, and offering that training is very important to us because we believe that this activity has to happen at more than just a handful of institutions. We're seeing the interest from scholars, and we want to help them generate more of this scholarship.
Thank you. I had one question I wanted to ask our the other panelists. Did you have a question for David and Samantha, perhaps? You did? Perfect. Come on up. And I know we're about at time, so this will be the last question.
Super quick question. I'm Lisa Baer from the University of Georgia Press, and I saw in one of your slides that you're working with Princeton University Press on monographs. And I was wondering if you could speak to that, unless I misread.
Yeah, the reason you saw the quizzical look on my face was that we were just using that as illustrative of a monograph publisher. So in that ecosystem of scholarly outputs from the early grant-funded project research to scholarly monograph outputs, we wanted to give you an example of each. I just chose, but you know, to tip my hand, I know the director and I like her, so.
So I'll ask another question, and this is for David and Samantha. Who will be the main users of underlined science, and what problem will it solve for them?
Well, I don't suppose Samantha's going to answer that, so I'll let her first answer for the Moressier product, and then I'll answer for underline.
Yeah, so I think for Moressier, the main user of our collection is going to be the researchers in those various disciplines. You know, we have early stage research collections across the spectrum of disciplines, and those researchers will be able to access that content regardless of whether they were at that conference or able to attend that session. So it's going to really enhance their ability to understand what's happening in their field right now, and learn from that for their current and their future research projects without having to wait for that journal article to publish.
And quickly, because I know you want to go, the Underlined Science platform serves researchers and their need to access scholarly scientific conference presentations that they couldn't go to, they missed, they need to reference back. It also serves the presenters themselves in terms of supporting their CVs, so they can reference back to a presentation where in the past the best they could probably do was link to a conference proceedings paper.
Great, thank you. Well, let's finish up with one more round of applause for our panelists. And I'll give a quick plug for the end of the closing session, Polapalooza. I'll be your moderator for that, so come and join me and fill up the room before we all go home. Enjoy the rest of the conference, everyone.